The debate is closed and the vote will be held tomorrow. The next item on the agenda is debates on cases of breaches of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Next debate on the agenda is post-election situation in Uganda and threats against opposition leader Bobi Wine. My first speaker is uno de los autores, el señor.
Muchas gracias, President.
Thank you very much, President.
In Uganda, the full subversion of democratic standards, abuse, severe restrictions on civic space, widespread intimidation of opposition figures, fraud, violence, and a nationwide internet blackout. How is it possible that the main opposition candidate, Mr. Bobi Wine, could have been sieged by the military in his house and his family and his wife assaulted by government forces? All of this to guarantee a seventh term in office of Yoweri Museveni. It is just unacceptable, and Europe cannot accept this. I must thank all the political groups that we have convened and made a consensus about this. This is, of course, not just about Uganda. It's about supporting the hundreds of millions of Africans who seek freedom, who seek the right for their voices to be heard, who seek their fight for progress and dignity, but are not allowed to do so through violence and oppression. For decades, this European Union has been engaging with our African partners to try to support free and fair elections. I have myself participated in electoral observations on the continent, and I'm very much aware of the challenges. But we need to do more. We have the means to do more, because today it is Bobi Wine in Uganda. Last year it was Tundu Lissu in Tanzania. And next year it might be Alberto Costa Jr. in Angola. Opposition leaders are being persecuted, elections are being stolen, and we cannot allow, as Europeans, continually to close our eyes, and especially our governments who are making economical dealings with the government of Uganda. Madam Commissioner, the Council has to hear high voice and the opinion of this Parliament about these very tragic circumstances that are happening in Uganda. Thank you very much.
Señor López Istúriz, my second speaker is another author, Mr. Hayde.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, ahead of the elections, Bobi Wine was cheered by tens of thousands of Ugandan voters wherever he appeared in the country. Now, after the elections, he is under siege, and tens of thousands of citizens took the streets, this time in protest. The post-election situation in Uganda shows a systematic assault on fundamental rights. President Museveni's seventh term followed elections that failed to meet democratic standards, preceded and followed by mass arrests, violence, attacks on journalists, the shutdown of civil society, an internet blackout, and killings of unarmed civilians. The harassment of Bobi Wine, his family and members of the National Unity Platform is unacceptable. The European Union must act consistently to end immediately all violence, threats and the arbitrary detention of opposition politicians and their supporters. We must review our cooperation with Uganda and firmly support civil society, journalists, human rights and LGBTIQ+ defenders, as well as the democratic opposition.
Mr. Hayde. Mr. Otgen is as well an author.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, colleagues. What happened on January 15th in Uganda, the so-called elections, were not an election. They were a military operation, and the facts confirm it. Soldiers, acting on direct government orders, raided the home of opposition leader Bobi Wine, assaulted his family and forced the family into exile. Opposition supporters were arrested, disappeared or were killed, including Mesa Kokelo, who was fatally shot while attending a peaceful rally. We are deeply alarmed by reports that the regime has publicly threatened to kill opposition leader Bobi Wine. All these are not isolated incidents. They are acts of terror which are meant to silence an entire opposition. We call for the immediate and unconditional release of all political prisoners and end to military trial of civilians, full accountability for the crimes committed and a real electoral reform. Today, we as European Parliament say clearly, we stand with Bobi Wine, Uganda's opposition and civil society, and all those who risk everything to demand freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Mr. Fröhlich is an author as well.
Herr Präsident.
Thank you, President. Idi Amin, former dictator of Uganda, said that he can't guarantee free speech. Critics of what's been happening in Uganda really can show that Uganda is an example of a post-colonial area. The opposition is suppressed, and between 2020 and 2024, millions of euros were spent to ensure governance in Uganda. This has led to reactions, and in the end, this is just wasted money. We should focus development policy on economic growth and infrastructure, not just on exports. That will give us access to resources. It's a win-win situation. That's the best way of dealing with it. Thank you.
We jump into the second part on behalf of the EPP group, Mr. Schenk.
Herr Präsident, liebe
President, colleagues. Well, to talk about Uganda is uncomfortable, but to turn a blind eye is irresponsible. What we say or what we don't say is important. Uganda is in a situation which we cannot possibly ignore. We're talking about citizens who suffer from violence, media that are not allowed to do their work, opposition with a very narrow and ever narrowing political area. So the elections have been characterized by imprisonment and also the removal of the internet, and Bobi Wine, who's had to go into hiding. This is a violation of basic principles. We in the Union want to have partnerships based on human dignity, on freedom, and on the rule of law. Our message, therefore, is absolutely indispensable. We stand on the side of the people of Uganda, not on the side of political repression. Power without legitimacy is fragile. Stability with no freedom is fragile too. So we need to make sure that we protect human rights. Thank you.
Mr. Bullman, you have the floor on behalf of the Socialists and Democrats group.
Herr Präsident, Frau
President, Commissioner, please allow me to read a social media post, to quote it.
22 NUP terrorists since last week. NUP steht für National Unity.
NUP is the National Unity Platform. That's the opposition party. I continue to quote.
The 23rd is Kabobi. Kabobi steht für Bobi Wine.
Kabobi is Bobi Wine, the leader of the opposition and the candidate for the presidency. That quote is from the son of the president. He's also head of the Ugandan army. The post has now been removed, apparently because they fear an international reaction. I'm in favour of offering money to strengthen democracy. I'm in favour of protecting human rights through our cooperation. But this is completely unfair, what is happening, and I'm waiting for action from the Commission and the Council. The European Parliament is not going to let this go.
My next speaker on behalf of the ESN group is Mr. Sikisanikire.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie.
Thank you, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. 40 years is a long time, and 40 years ago the world was completely different. Diego Maradona was the best football player. Margaret Thatcher was the ruling person in the UK. Uganda has had the same president all the time, so no surprise people want changes. But for the 40 years, the president of Uganda did not change either. He rules with the same methods all the time. And this shows the divergence between what we're talking here, where we condemn the behavior of authorities, and that we make business with Uganda. So here there is this discrepancy, because on the one hand we talk about it and indeed we invest there, and we have a policy which should be realpolitik, that is, we focused on business and raw materials. The violence obviously has a very dark side to it, and we should condemn what's happening there. On the other hand, foreign policy should be about caring about our own interest. Thank you.
Much, dear colleague. I have 3 requests for the catch the eye. First one is Mr. Stier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the situation in Uganda is not only a problem for Bobi Wine. Of course, it is for him and his family. It's not only a problem for Uganda, for the country. We've seen that last year in Tanzania. We are fortunately seeing that in other parts of Africa. But this is also a failure for us. It's a failure of our development cooperation policy. Because I will remind that in the UN, SDGs, the 16th SDG, is about good governance. And this is exactly what is lacking, for example, in Uganda. And then we are thinking, why is the case that for every euro that we are sending in our development cooperation, there are 10 times more euros that are evaporating in corruption in these countries. This is because there is no accountability, because the opposition is treated in that way, because we have presidents that are in the 7th mandate without any checks and balances. This is a failure also of our development cooperation policy. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor Stier. Señor López Aguilar.
Dear Chair, President, González Pons, Commissioner, more than 10 years ago, my first mandate is this European Parliament. I was a member of a EU electoral observation mission to Uganda, a country long tormented by oppressive, brutal regimes. Museveni was elected. So many years after, Museveni is still in place, but democracy has been eroded, human rights continue to be violated. I had the opportunity to check the importance and the weight of EU diplomacy on the spot in Uganda. So it summed up with the embassies of the member states, and we're still powerless in order to make the right point to bring about fair, credible elections in Uganda. Insofar, there is something we can do. It's make the case for human rights violated of the leaders of the opposition, so that the European message is still heard in Kampala, in Uganda, and all over the place, that we do care about those leaders of the opposition which are so unfairly prosecuted against. So please, Commissioner, take the message. Action is needed in Uganda, Kampala. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor López Aguilar. Mr. Tinkinen, seat 210.
Mr. President, Uganda's president, who has been in power for more than 40 years, has placed the only credible opposition candidate under house arrest. 40 years in power, and challengers are put under house arrest. This is not democracy, it is criminal. Now listen to what the EU's official policy is at the same time regarding its support for Uganda. The EU cooperates with Uganda to promote the country's green transition, support sustainable and inclusive job creation and investment growth, and strengthen democratic governance that advances social inclusion and human rights. It seems the support policy has not been very successful. The EU must now decide whether we want to continue financing these regimes that laugh at our declarations with gold teeth flashing, or is it time to adopt a new mantra for development aid as well? Here we draw the line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Madam Commissioner, you have the floor.
Honourable members, the European Union, through its delegation in Kampala and locally represented European Union member states, have been following closely the run-up to and the elections on January 26. These engagements included meetings with all political parties, including with the National Unity Platform, as well as with electoral bodies and with government and the leadership of the Ugandan People's Defence Forces. An EU-funded project focused on electoral violence prevention called Let's Talk Peace was launched ahead of the campaign, which was welcomed by stakeholders across political lines. A diplomatic watch by the EU delegation was carried out on election day, and the spokesperson of the European External Action Service issued a statement after the announcement of the results. As mentioned in the statement, we share the findings of the preliminary statement of the African Union COMESA IGAD Joint Observation Mission as regards the involvement of the military in the electoral process, which is contrary to the Ugandan 1995 constitution. Furthermore, the internet shutdown implemented 2 days before the elections clearly limited access to information and freedom of association. We are also very concerned with the arbitrary arrests and suspension of numerous civil society organisations ahead of the elections. We call for investigations and accountability following the reports of death, violence and detentions of opposition politicians and human rights defenders, as well as for clarification of the current situation of Bobi Wine in particular. We call on all political actors to exercise restraint, to refrain from violence or incitement. The EU, despite the current challenges, will continue engagement with Uganda on a broad-based agenda based on shared interest and mutual respect, including on trade, critical raw materials. Our cooperation and humanitarian programmes promote a Team Europe approach, exploring opportunities for transformative projects, including under the Global Gateway. At the same time, the EU, through an open dialogue with Ugandan authorities, will continue to advocate for the respect of human rights and democratic principles and to follow up on anti-discrimination measures. The EU will continue to stand by civil society organisations and support them in line with their needs and our values and principles.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner.